Good afternoon, I'm Nadia Jani and you're watching A News. Let's see your headlines. China-US trade talks conclude without a deal to prevent tariffs from soaring again. The UK sets to recognise Palestinian state unless Israel meets its conditions. And a powerful earthquake in Russia's Far East sets off tsunami warnings in Japan, Alaska and Hawaii. The United States and China have wrapped up 2 days of trade talks in Sweden. Both sides laid out their concerns, from the US worries over Chinese overcapacity to Beijing's frustration with export controls. Our correspondent in Brussels, William Denslow, has the latest.
The US trade delegation described this 2 days of trade talks as constructive, saying they'll be bringing back a positive report to Washington. The trade representatives, including US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, said that technical talks will continue in the coming days, and that will all be taken into consideration before Donald Trump makes a final decision on whether to go ahead and extend this tariff rate pause that we've seen between the US and China. He says that that is just one of the options that will be available to the US president, and he will make a final decision on where this trade spat will go next. The US representative said over the past 2 days of trade talks, a number of issues were discussed, with China touching on a number of the sticking points and concerns that the two sides have when it comes to trade. A huge issue as far as the US is concerned is feelings of production overcapacity and the impact that is having on US trade and global trade more broadly. As far as the Chinese delegation is concerned, well, they have issues when it comes to export controls from the US, something they want to see addressed. The trade team from Beijing said that they very much want to push for a continued pause of this tariff hiatus. They say that there was a candid exchange about economy and trade concerns. Over recent days, there's been plenty of speculation as to whether there will be a meeting later this year between President Xi Jinping and his US counterpart, Donald Trump. The delegations from the US in Sweden said that this was not an issue that was discussed. US President Donald Trump also taking to social media on Tuesday, saying that he is not seeking this meeting with President Xi. William Denslow, A News, Brussels.
Brazil's finance minister says the government is preparing support for companies likely to be hit by steep US tariffs set to take place in just a few days. The measures aim to cushion key exporters as economic uncertainty grows ahead of the 1st of August deadline. Finance Minister Fernando Haddad said that plan will help firms maintain confidence in their investment. US President Donald Trump is raising tariffs on Brazilian imports that include crude oil, beef and orange juice from 10 to 50%.
Very easy to explain, but I don't want to waste your time by explaining it. But for years,
US President Donald Trump warned on Tuesday that Washington will impose tariffs and other measures on Russia within 10 days unless Moscow shows progress toward ending its 3-year war in Ukraine. Trump was speaking aboard Air Force One, saying he had not received a response from Russia since announcing the shortened deadline, reduced from 50 days he initially set a month ago. He downplayed concerns about the impact of sanctions on global oil prices, pledging to increase domestic oil production. The president's warning marks a tougher stance on Moscow as he grows frustrated with Russia's refusal to agree to a ceasefire. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has announced that the country will recognise a Palestinian state at the United Nations General Assembly in September, unless Israel takes decisive steps to ease the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and end the war. Starmer outlined 4 conditions for Israel.
Britain will recognise a Palestine state at the United Nations General Assembly in September if Israel doesn't take steps to end the humanitarian situation in Gaza and end the war. Prime Minister Keir Starmer made the announcement on Tuesday, outlining 4 key conditions for Tel Aviv.
End the appalling situation in Gaza, agree to a ceasefire, and commit to a long-term sustainable peace, reviving the prospect of a two-state solution. And this includes allowing the UN to restart the supply of aid and making clear that there will be no annexations in the West Bank. Meanwhile, our message to the terrorists of Hamas is unchanged and unequivocal. They must immediately release all of the hostages, sign up to a ceasefire, disarm, and accept that they will play no part in the government of Gaza.
Backing the Prime Minister's announcement, Foreign Secretary David Lammy reinforced the message.
His Majesty's government therefore intends to recognise the state of Palestine when the UN General Assembly gathers in September here in New York.
Liberal Democrat leader also, Sir Ed Davey, welcomed Starmer's announcement as a crucial step, but urged the government to act without delay. And more than 255 MPs, including more than half of Labour's parliamentary party, have signed a letter urging unconditional recognition of a Palestinian state. However, Israel's government has firmly rejected the UK's position. The Israeli Foreign Ministry accused Britain of pandering to domestic political pressure and rewarding Hamas. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu condemned the move as dangerous appeasement, warning it would embolden terrorism at Israel's borders. US President Donald Trump also criticised Starmer's approach, suggesting it incentivises extremist groups and undermines prospects for peace.
Well, you could make the case that you're rewarding people, that, you're rewarding Hamas if you do that. And I don't think they should be rewarded. So I'm not in that camp, to be honest. We'll let you know where we are, but I am not in that camp.
Mr. President,
because if you do that, you really are rewarding Hamas. And I'm not about to do that.
Starmer's decision comes after last week, when France became the first G7 nation to announce it would formally recognise a Palestinian state in September, adding that to international pressure for a resolution to the Gaza conflict. However, not all European powers are aligned. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz stated that Germany has no immediate plans to follow suit, arguing that recognition should be one of the last steps on the path to a two-state solution. Globally, around 139 countries already recognise Palestinian statehood. In 2024, Spain, Ireland, and Norway joined that list, aiming to increase diplomatic pressure and support a ceasefire in Gaza. Though Palestinian representatives currently hold limited rights at the United Nations, their statehood is recognised by numerous international bodies, including the Arab League. Meanwhile, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza continues to worsen. UN agencies have described the situation as man-made mass starvation, blaming the Israeli government for restricting aid deliveries to the territory. Israel denies the allegations, stating that no restrictions exist and that there is no starvation in Gaza.
Now, to talk about this further, I'm joined by former diplomat Dr. Mili D. Mertash. Hello.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for having me.
No problem. My first question is, do you think that this bold step from the UK to recognise Palestine as a state will help end the war?
It's an important question, and a question maybe everyone wants to find an answer. But I think the answer stands with the maybe attitude of Mr. Netanyahu's, and as we always declare as the Turkish side, as many experts and international level diplomats declaring that this far-rightist understanding in Israel, if they do not maybe stop their arguments, their harsh and their strong arguments against some humanitarian causes, I think they will continue to lose many supporters also from the Western world. We already know that, maybe Mr. Macron, with the French president, this tendency started strongly with this Western maybe changing attitude towards Israel in its unilateral policies. And now one of the maybe most important advocates, supporters in the Western world, United Kingdom, has also openly declared that they will choose the option of this acknowledging or recognizing this important reality of Palestinian state. Of course, United Nations and the international community, international consciousness, this is maybe the most important pillars of this international law, and maybe the humanitarian and liberal atmosphere of international diplomacy. And now I think Israel will be much more under this pressure of international community more and more.
And do you think there's been, a deepening humanitarian crisis because of the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and reports of mass starvation? It's impacted calls, obviously, for recognition. And do you think other countries will join the UK and France and others to recognise Palestinian as a state?
We hope so. It is not about maybe United Kingdom's, France or other countries, maybe unilateral position. It's the position of this international community, I think. This most important umbrella institution of international politics and diplomacy is, first of all, must be United Nations. And as we all know, from the first months of this crisis, of this humanitarian crisis in Palestine, all these diplomats of United Nations, including Mr. Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of United Nations, they are coming under heavy pressure of Israel. They are even prohibited to enter the territories for independent investigations. They are prohibited, and they are really accused, by far-rightist Israeli diplomats or bureaucrats that they are supporting terrorism, quote-unquote. Of course, international community members, international diplomats, they are not supporting any terroristic activities. They are only wanting some independent investigations in these territories, Palestinian territories. Yes, some Israeli politicians said that in 5, maybe 10% of this territory are maybe allowed for this entering of this humanitarian aid, but we cannot accept that maybe 90% of these territories are under heavy starvation, under heavy, like a post-modern genocide conditions, maybe for months.
And as you mentioned, we know that Israel has criticised this move by the UK. So what do you think is likely to happen come September? And will Israel fold to the international pressure?
Yes, again, we do not know that Israel deny Israel's unrecognition of this behavior of international community comes to a very irrational structure, because they already declared that, Mr. Netanyahu and the politicians in Israel, that they will not maybe enter, they will not have any connection with France, because Mr. Macron, as I said, at the first hand accepted the situation. Now, Mr. Starmer, United Kingdom's representatives also said that they will recognize unless Israel takes some important steps. We hope still that they will take the steps, like Mr. Starmer said, but if they do not recognize these steps, Israeli politicians, I think this Palestinian state will be recognized in September in United Nations, and Israel, we hope so, will not enter much more irrational body of this international politics, because this irrationality really destroys every step in this diplomacy game, because even the formation of Israel after 1948 is on this rational step of humanitarian causes, but now slowly they destroy every rational and humanitarian step in their formation, in their maybe raison d'etat of this Israeli states in the Middle East.
Thank you, Dr. Milad Demirtaş, for joining me.
Thank you very much.
Israelis are split over claims of famine in Gaza. While some deny it, others protested in Tel Aviv, calling for an end to see what they see as a deliberate starvation.
A new international warning over famine in Gaza has triggered strong and opposing reactions in Israel, from outright denial to protests on the streets. The latest assessment from the Integrated Food Security Phase classification said there's now evidence of widespread starvation, malnutrition and disease in the Strip. It comes as the United Nations says that there are more than 500,000 people, nearly a quarter of Gaza's population, who are enduring famine-like conditions. However, not everyone in Israel believes it.
What I think about the report of the IPC regarding the famine in Gaza is I think it's outrageous. I don't think there's a famine in Gaza. I don't think the situation there is ideal or very good, but I don't think there's a famine in Gaza. Over 600 trucks have gone in with aid and food, and I honestly don't think there's a famine in Gaza.
Some Israelis expressed compassion but said their focus remains on the hostages still being held in Gaza.
Everybody deserves good life and to be fed and to be loved, but we have hostages over there. We have people from our own that are kidnapped, and it's kind of difficult to think of the kids in Gaza first, for our people, our families, our brothers and sisters over there.
Outside the US Embassy in Tel Aviv, protesters held signs showing images of starving children and accused both Israel and the US of enabling a humanitarian disaster.
It's not hunger, it's starvation policy directed by the Israeli government, and it's very important to say that humanity is in a very bad shape these days, while everybody is keeping silent about the most horrible crimes committed against the Gazan people.
Read the report today. It was heartbreaking, but anyone that has been following the news and listening to what Palestinians are telling knew that this was coming. This is actually a catastrophe.
Gaza's health ministry says 147 people have died of hunger-related causes, including 88 children during the past few weeks. However, Israel denies it's using starvation as a weapon, with Foreign Minister Gideon Saar calling such claims lies.
Meta will suspend all political, electoral and social issue ads across the EU from October, citing new transparency rules as overly complex and legally unclear, as reported by Anadolu Agency. The EU's new regulation aims to combat disinformation, foreign meddling and misuse of voter data, with key provisions taking effect on the 10th of October. Meta said the law introduces unworkable requirements that threaten personalised advertising and make compliance too difficult. But EU officials argue the rules are essential to protect elections and ensure citizens know who is targeting them and why. Google previously announced it would also stop political advertising in the EU ahead of the regulation. The United States has accused the EU of restricting free speech through its Digital Services Act, just 9 days before the trade deal deadline, Politico reports. Washington's campaign against the law included social media posts and public speeches, drawing backlash from France and EU officials. The EU strongly rejects the charge, saying the law targets only illegal content and safeguards of freedom of expression. France responded with its own messaging defending European digital rules and hinting at possible retaliation against US tech firms. An 8.8 magnitude earthquake has hit Russia's Far East region, damaging buildings and triggering tsunami alerts from Japan to Hawaii. Residents in several countries are being urged to stay away from the coast.
A powerful 8.8 magnitude earthquake has struck off Russia's Kamchatka peninsula, triggering tsunami warnings across the Pacific. The quake, one of the strongest in the region in decades, has put several countries on high alert. A kindergarten was damaged in Kamchatka, but officials confirmed no children were inside and no injuries were reported.
Today's earthquake was a challenge for all of us. It's the strongest quake in decades of tremors. According to preliminary estimates by specialists and seismologists, the magnitude of the earthquake was 7.7 to 7.9, and there is a tsunami threat warning. That's why I am again repeating my plea to stay away from coastlines. Specialists have already begun a thorough inspection of sites and socially significant facilities for possible quake damage.
In Japan, authorities issued tsunami warnings for eastern coastal areas, with waves expected to reach up to 3 meters. Many have already found shelter in fear the warnings may become reality.
For citizens in the areas included in the tsunami warning, please evacuate to a safe place immediately, such as designated evacuation buildings and hills. We are receiving reports and currently monitoring for any details of damage or casualties.
The Japan Meteorological Agency warned that a major tsunami could continue for more than a day following the earthquake. Tsunami alerts have been issued for Alaska, Hawaii, Guam, and parts of Micronesia. US officials warn hazardous waves could arrive within hours.
As the mayor indicated, our #1 priority is to get people to safety. Our #1 priority is life safety. And so right now it's an easy thing. Get away from the beaches, get inland, and get upward. So that's our message right now.
US President Donald Trump took to X to urge residents in Hawaii to stay alert and follow local tsunami warnings. Authorities in affected regions are urging people to remain vigilant and stay away from the coast until further notice.
Our Asia correspondent Laura Westbrook has more on the report from Japan.
Japan upgraded its tsunami advisory to a warning, with its meteorological agency saying that tsunami waves could continue for more than a day after the earthquake. More than 1.9 million people have been asked to evacuate in Japan, with warnings spanning hundreds of kilometers along its Pacific coast, from Hokkaido in the north all the way to Wakayama Prefecture in the south. Now, residents under evacuation orders have been told to seek high ground and to stay away from the coast. Waves have been arriving in Japan. The highest was 1.3 meters in northeastern Japan. But the meteorological agency has warned that tsunami waves could reach up to 3 meters high. Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba said a task force is in place to assess the situation. And authorities have stressed that tsunamis could hit the shoreline repeatedly over an extended period of time, with later waves potentially larger than the first. And so it's told people to stay evacuated until warnings and advisories are officially lifted. Now, TEPCO, the company that runs the nuclear power plant, has said all workers at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant have been evacuated, but it added that no abnormalities have been reported. Now, this is something that is being closely watched because of what happened in 2011, when a tsunami triggered by a magnitude 9 earthquake resulted in a nuclear meltdown at that plant. Now, since then, there have been many precautionary measures that have been put in place, but this is a crucial area to keep safe, with tons of water used to cool nuclear debris and then stored in large tanks. TEPCO says it is continuing to monitor the situation. Now, elsewhere, from places from the Philippines to Indonesia, they've also been issued tsunami advisories. Residents have been cautioned against going near beaches and coastal areas. And Chinese authorities, too, have issued a tsunami alert for Zhejiang province and Shanghai, saying they expect waves of up to 1 meter. And these are areas that are already being impacted by Typhoon Komei. Laura Westbrook for A News, Hong Kong.
The city of Shanghai in China is battling strong winds and heavy rain, as well as threats of a tsunami, forcing more than 280,000 people to relocate. The tropical storm, named Komei, has already forced widespread transport disruption, with hundreds of flights and ferry services cancelled. Local authorities have imposed speed limits on roads and railways. Authorities are also monitoring the risk of a storm surge after an offshore earthquake in Russia triggered a tsunami warning. The Trump administration is moving to repeal the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's 2009 finding that labels greenhouse gases a threat to public health. Critics warn this rollback could erase decades of progress and worsen pollution, especially with changing climates impacting the rise of wildfires and floodings.
Environmental groups have blasted the move that the Trump administration proposes to end the legal foundation of America's climate policy. The administration wants to repeal the Environmental Protection Agency's 2009 endangerment finding that labels greenhouse gases a threat to public health. Activists say it spells the end of the road for U.S. action against climate change. EPA's Administrator Lee Zeldin made the announcement on Tuesday and called it the greatest day of deregulation in American history. The proposal, which needs to undergo a public comment period, would cut $54 billion in costs annually through the repeal of all greenhouse gas standards, including the vehicle tailpipe standard, he said. The tailpipe emissions limits encourage automakers to build more electric vehicles, so if this goes, the car industry won't be pushed to make EVs. But 3 former EPA chiefs criticise the move, warning it risks millions of lives and betrays the agency's mission. Critics call it a kill shot designed to undo current and future climate rules at once. As well as vehicle tailpipes, the repeal would end current limits on greenhouse gas pollution from power plants, smokestacks and other sources, and hamper future US efforts to combat global warming. Legal experts say the repeal faces legal challenges, but if finalised, it could wipe out decades of climate protections and tie the hands of future administrations. As the planet warms and disasters grow more extreme, environmental advocates say the EPA isn't just walking away from climate action, it's working to shut the door behind it.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Kazakhstan's President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev signed 20 cooperation agreement deals during Tokayev's visit to Ankara. The deals covered a number of sectors, including energy, transport, trade, health, education, tech, and justice. Key agreements focus on oil cooperation and developing freight transport along the Middle Corridor Railway. They also committed to partnerships in digital innovation, health, education, and urban planning. Additionally, talks included plans to boost Kazakh oil exports through the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline. To delve into the details of more of this, I'm joined by Nur Erim, the president of Dragman Strategies in Istanbul. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good, thank you. My first question is, what areas are covered by the newly signed cooperation agreements?
Well, there is actually, I believe, about 17 different agreements that have been signed between the two countries. And they're covering many things, especially energy, bilateral trade, and common security concerns. Let's not forget, this is actually a very good step both for the works that have been done for the Black Sea Cooperation Union, as well as cooperation of Turkic states in general. So these are all contributing factors to a more enhanced and closer relationship between the Turkic states, all of them, whether those that are right by the organization or that are just standing right nearby it. And I think efforts like these will just enhance more and more towards a common goal of the region's stability and security and prosperity altogether.
And just from that, how do you think the deal reflects on the growing strategic partnership between the two countries?
Well, it affects greatly in two ways. And this is actually true for any kind of a agreement. Number one, it gets the sides closer together. This means they start seeing more things eye to eye, and they start understanding each other more, and which leads to a more firm and more elaborate relationships. But on the other side, also, besides being cultural and ethnically of the same root, obviously, but this also brings something else. As you are more integrated with others, and as the ties strengthen, it actually becomes much harder, God forbid, in any bad situation, to be apart from each other. So the closer you are, the more working relationships you have, and the more closely knit, common goals you have, it becomes harder and harder to be apart. So what happens is, after a while, everybody in any given agreement, any given region that is trying to cooperate, do become inseparable. which actually brings out a great power from all sides, in this case between Turkey and Kazakhstan, but in other cases with the Organization of Turkic States, and moreover with the Black Sea Cooperation Union. It becomes where the sides that are in any agreement become inseparable, and hence they will always try to contribute to common goals, and more importantly, actually will have common goals. So these are great steps towards acting as one body, or taking steps towards acting as one body, at least in areas where it makes a huge difference to act along with partners, along with brothers, rather than acting alone.
Thank you for joining me, Nur Erim. Thank you. Kazakhstan has reached an agreement with the European Union on coal shipments through Russian ports. As a result, the EU's 18th sanctions package includes certain exemptions. The transit of Kazakh coal through selected Russian ports is now permitted again under specific conditions. Our reporter and correspondent Fariza Kalamirza has more details.
The European Union has made a limited exception in its 18th sanctions package, permitting the transit of Kazakh coal through select Russian ports. This information comes from Kazakhstan's Ministry of Trade. The ministry clarified that this exemption is very narrowly defined. It applies exclusively to coal originating from Kazakhstan owned by non-residents of countries under EU sanctions. Russian ports can be used only as transit points for loading or shipment, and storage, purchase or processing of coal in these ports remains prohibited. Earlier in February 2025, the European Union's 16th sanctions package had completely blocked transactions involving several Russian ports. This created serious challenges for the stability of Kazakh coal exports to Europe, especially affecting the port of Ust-Luga, which is a key transit route. Despite these restrictions, the European Union remains a crucial market for Kazakh coal. Last year, Kazakhstan exported 5.2 million tons of coal to Europe, generating more than $300 million in revenue. This accounted for more than half, or 51.8% of the country's total coal exports. And in the first 5 months of this year, exports to Europe reached 1.6 million tons, representing 38.5% of total coal exports for that period. Among the largest buyers of Kazakh coal are Poland, Italy and the Netherlands. Italy, in particular, increased its purchases by 4.4 times over 11 months, reaching approximately 230,000 tons and spending more than $41 million. Experts emphasize that Kazakhstan has strong potential to expand coal exports to Europe. Recent heat waves across the continent have increased electricity demand, which in turn raised the need for thermal coal. Fuel prices in Europe have risen, and Kazakhstan remains one of the region's reliable suppliers. And future export trends will largely depend on gas prices and coal stock levels at European ports. From Almaty, Kazakhstan, Fariza Kalamirza, A News.
New survey data from Armenia reveals growing dissatisfaction among citizens, especially young people, towards the country's current political and social direction. The survey was conducted by the International Republican Institute and highlights a complex picture of public sentiment towards Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan's government and the ongoing peace process with Azerbaijan. Here's our detailed report.
The latest survey by the International Republican Institute shows almost half of Armenia's population, 49%, believe the country is heading in the wrong direction. Only 36% think otherwise. This poses a challenge for Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan, particularly as dissatisfaction runs high among Armenia's youth. Nearly half of those aged between 18 and 35 expressed discontent, despite the government's emphasis on policies aimed at this demographic. Yet, despite declining support. Pashinyan remains Armenia's most trusted politician, although with just 13% approval. Foreign Minister Ararat Mirzoyan follows far behind with 5%, while former President Robert Kocharian received just 4%. Significantly, a striking 61% of respondents expressed trust in no political figure at all, indicating a growing disconnect between Armenian society and its political class. Youth disengagement is particularly evident. 63% of young Armenians either do not know who to support or have chosen not to vote at all. When asked about pressing issues, Armenians overwhelmingly pointed to security and border protection, followed by economic struggles, unemployment and rising costs. The survey also highlighted contrasting views on peace with Azerbaijan. While 47% support a peace treaty, significant opposition comes from younger Armenians. 48% reject the peace agreement, compared to 58% support among older generations. When asked about Prime Minister Pashinyan's priorities over the next 6 months, respondents emphasized peace, border security, army strengthening, and a shift in foreign policy. These top concerns align closely with the ongoing peace negotiations with Azerbaijan. These insights underscore a critical moment for Armenia. The government must urgently address youth dissatisfaction to build broader consensus on the peace agenda. For Azerbaijan, these findings strengthen arguments advocating constitutional changes in Armenia, ensuring lasting peace and stability in the region.
Previously, we discussed the declining popularity of Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan with Richard Giragosyan, director of the Regional Studies Centre from Yerevan. Here is a clip of what he told us.
Well, they are very relevant. This U.S. implemented public opinion survey is actually the most reliable that's conducted in Armenia. And the findings should be a wake-up call for the Armenian government. However, this does represent a snapshot in time. In other words, what's equally important here is not just the trend of declining popularity of the incumbent government, but that there is no alternative still. The opposition, widely discredited, has suffered an even greater decline. So in the end, this should be a wake-up call for the incumbent authorities, but nevertheless, it's not as significant as it would seem.
Pro-Kremlin political analyst Sergei Markov spoke to Russian Tasgard TV and claimed that the root of current tensions between Moscow and Baku lies in a downed aircraft incident. According to Markov, Baku is demanding an apology for the incident with the Azal plane that took place near Akto over the Caspian Sea in December 2024.
The reason for what is happening between Russia and Azerbaijan is undoubtedly the plane. As is known, we shot down the plane. They think that it is known for sure that we shot down the plane, and they know that our authorities also know for sure that they shot down the plane, and they want us to apologize the way they did when they shot down our helicopter.
Georgia has connected 5 solar power plants with a total capacity of 10 megawatts to its national grid, marking the first time solar energy has entered the country's transmission system. Supported by nearly $5 million in local bank funding, Georgia's Economy Ministry says this project is part of a broader renewable energy effort. Currently, 125 megawatts of wind power are under construction, with an additional 200 megawatts in development. The long-term goal is to strengthen energy security and enable electricity exports to Europe through the planned Black Sea cable. And lastly, A News is back on tour. The 3rd edition of A News Talks gets underway in Ankara in Turkey. The theme for today's discussion is digital and cultural diplomacy in the AI era. A News Talks co-host Katie Wilson sent in this from the venue.
Yes, that's right. We are back on the road again, and it is time for the 3rd instalment of A News Talks. We started in Baku, we've been to Astana, and today we are in Ankara, capital of Turkey. And joining our host, Guy Sean, right here at Yildirim Bayezid University will be academics from a range of specialisms, including international relations, politics and economics. And on the agenda today is digital and cultural diplomacy in the AI era. And not only that, but joining me later on today is a range of students who will be offering the next generation's perspectives on these issues shaping our world, namely artificial intelligence, diplomacy, and what that means for the Turkic world. So it's going to be a very busy day here in Ankara. We're setting up right in there and it's about to all get started. And if you're wondering where you'll be able to watch A News Talks, well, the full episodes will be airing very shortly on A News, so you will be able to catch up on all of these conversations.
That's all we have for now. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News.